Hey, good morning, friends. Today is Monday, December the 16th, 2024, and the time now is 7:45 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk briefly about the situation in Syria, the situation in the Middle East. I want to talk specifically about a picture, an image that I noticed, that I came across during the weekend. And this pertains to three Israeli soldiers on the highest mountain or the highest point in Syria, and they are displaying the Israeli flag. Now, friends, you are watching the playlist series, The Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics, and this is episode 27. Once again, friends, you are watching the playlist series, The Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics, and this is episode 27. Now, friends, the situation in the Middle East, as I've said too many times, continues to spiral out of control. And one big event which recently happened was the fall of Assad, Assad's government in Syria, and the fall of Syria. Now, Syria fell to the HTS, which is said to be a terrorist, a rebel group, or a militant group. And many are providing contradictory or challenging point of view as to how to categorize the HTS. Now, friends, when the HTS took over Syria, when Assad fell, and up till now, there has been jubilation throughout the West. And also, there has been jubilation even in Syria and even among many Muslims who had been jubilating about or for the fall of Assad. It kind of rubs me the same way as many Muslims had come after, a black people on social media saying that black people are not supporting Palestine. And many also came at Kamala Harris. They voted for Donald Trump, and Trump won the election. Now, in terms of the election in the United States, I was expecting that people look at the greater picture, the grander picture, and look at the situation in Gaza and the situation with the American election in the long term. In this case, as much as Joe Biden is supporting Israel over the Palestinians, as much as Kamala Harris is in the Joe Biden camp, I do believe that Kamala Harris, had she won the election, would have done enough to change the situation in the Middle East, at least not allow Israel to go all the way. But many voted against Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. To that, I've asked many times, by voting Donald Trump into office or by voting against Kamala Harris, making Donald Trump to win the election, do you as a Muslim, as an Arab, change the situation in Palestine for the better? Have you protected the Palestinian people? And many will say no. And I myself, to that question, I am going to say no. It is kind of like what is happening in Syria right now, where some Syrians and members in the Middle East, in the Arabian community, basically celebrating the fall of Assad. Now, the fall of Assad and Assad Syria is going to turn around the situation in the favor of Israel and the West, and the Palestinian people are going to be in big trouble. Honestly, I do think that we should call it. I made a video recently in which I said that the election of Donald Trump, or I asked a question, could the election of Donald Trump and the radicalism or extremism of members of his cabinet be the help that Israel needs, basically the turning point that could change the situation in the Middle East and enabling Israel to win the war in the Middle East, in Gaza? The truth here is, prior to the election, many had been terming or declaring that Israel has lost the war in Gaza. Now, my friends, many of us would have to acknowledge the fact or the significance that the election of Donald Trump may have won the war in Gaza, in the Middle East, for Israel. And also, it could have made the whole possibility of a greater Israel prominent, important, or possible. Now, guys, Friends, I do apologize for deviating. But the situation in Syria, it is very interesting. We know that Assad and the Assad government or military fell. Basically, the HTS took over Syria without a fight, without Assad or the Assad military putting up a fight. To an extent where many have been asking whether Russia abandoned Assad and Syria. Now, with the situation in Syria, it is said that the HTS had been carrying out brutality throughout Syria. I am asking, could the situation in the Middle East, in Syria, lead to Assad coming back? Now, Assad was said to have died in a plane crash, but then no plane or a crashed plane was found, and it is said that he has been in Russia seeking political asylum. Either way, we do not know where in Russia he is and whether he is still alive. But given that the HTS has taken over Syria, or after the HTS took over Syria, Israel carried out a bombarding spree, basically bombing the heck out of Syria, bombing military assets. It is said that the Israeli took out the Syrian Air Force or the Syrian military assets and even the Syrian Navy. The HTS has not put up a fight, which in this case, many are asking, is it that the HTS is an Israeli and the United States or Western asset? Which is a very important question, because if the HTS was actually a pro-Syria and anti-Assad group, they could have and should have fought the Israeli, because either way, it is their country. But the fact that they haven't done anything, it is very interesting. With this, it prompted me to ask whether the situation in Syria right now, with Israel occupying Syria, parts of Syria, and bombing Syria, could this be the factor that could lead Assad to come back? Because what it is creating, I do believe, is a form or a level of humiliation for Syria as a country and for the Syrian people as a group, whether we are talking about individually or collectively. Because if you are taking over a government or a country, ousting the current government or leadership, you as the leader of that country now should be in the position and should be willing to fight any outside forces that are coming at your government or your country. The fact that the HTS, as much as they were happy to take over Syria, has not gone against, or went against Israel. That is creating a scratching head moment for many around the world, and including myself. Now, friends, I do apologize again for deviating, but let me come back to the picture which I saw during the weekend of 3 Israeli soldiers on, I think it is known as Mount Hermon, the highest mountain, or peaks in Syria, which is above 9,000 feet or so. Now, that is a humiliation. And my question is, what is Israel doing? Because I do believe this, as much as in the short term, it is a victory for Israel and the West. In the long term, that could create a bone in the throat moment for Israel, the United States, and the West. And this is also creating a confirmation that perhaps the Russians and the Iranians could have set a trap for Israel and the West. Because if it is that the HTS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, then the West, the United States, one, is humiliating itself by supporting and working with Al-Qaeda, but also it is creating a situation where radicalism could be formed in Syria, which could then go after Israel itself and the United States. Now, friends, a mountain is a source of pride for a country. It is a symbol for a country or of a country. In terms of the country's well-being, a mountain is a source of water. It is a source of irrigation because it produces water, with the snow and the fog or the humidity and so on. It produces water for drinking, for sanitation, for agriculture, and for all other things. By Israel capturing the highest mountain in Syria, Mount Hermon, by Israel capturing the mountain, it is a humiliation. And the fact that the HTS hasn't done anything could be a problem for the HTS in the future. People could begin to react, and the HTS could react more with brutality, which could basically turn people off against them, making it possible for Assad or the likes of Assad to return. Now, for Israel, I do believe, as much as the Israelis are saying, occupying Mount Hermon, the mountain, is just a short-term plan or activity. Either way, that could create a bone-in-the-throat moment for Israel. But one thing that I find very important and significant is the reality, the parallel that I was able to draw between the image of the three Israeli soldiers displaying the Israeli flag on the mountain. That too, after Saddam Hussein fell in 2003 or so, and American soldiers basically climbing onto the statue of Saddam Hussein and placing the American flag onto Saddam Hussein's face. That basically sent shock throughout the world and even in the United States. The parallel between both images, one being the Israeli capturing the highest mountain in Syria and placing, or displaying the Israeli flag, and an American soldier after the fall of Saddam Hussein, placing the American flag onto the face of Saddam Hussein, covering his face, which basically telling everyone, this is not a war against terrorism. This is an occupation. This is an invasion. Now, in terms of Israel, I cannot recall any time since October 7, 2023, when Israel and Syria had been in a hot war in an exchange of weapon or munition against one another. So the fact that Israel invaded Syria after the fall of Assad, when there is an internal conflict in Syria, it is against international norm. It is bad. And once again, it is going to create a problem for Israel. Now, friends, I don't mean to be offensive, and I hope what I just said is not offensive to you. If you think I'm right, please comment. However, if you think I'm wrong, please let me know what you think. Please teach me, and I'm hoping and willing to learn. Now, friends, I'm going to end here. I want to thank you a lot for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, but most importantly and most especially, I want to thank you a lot, friends, for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace.